This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, this is Jim Peters with the Responsible Hospitality Institute. I'm here to introduce the concept of the sociable city and the building blocks that we've identified working with cities throughout North America in how the sociable city is developed. We begin with a basic premise that life is about relationships, and relationships are developed by how we socialize. And social ability is the sharing of an experience with other people that stimulates the senses, intellect, or emotions. This can be done with music or drinking or food, but mostly it's just the companionship of other people that we seek when we go out to a restaurant or a bar or a cafe or a nightclub, a music venue, all the different places where we gather to interact and socialize and share common experiences. I'm going to tell a little story about a wealthy man who visited his friend, and he toured her new house. They went to the first floor, the second floor, and when they got to the third floor and the man saw the wonderful view of the country and the city, he decided he wanted the same house. The man hired a contractor, or the same contractor, and the first day, as the contractor was laying the foundation, the man asked, "What are you doing?" The contractor replied, "I'm laying the foundation." The man said, "I don't want a foundation." The contractor said, "I need the foundation for the first floor," to which the man replied, "I don't want a first floor." Confused, the contractor said, "But the first floor is needed for the second floor." The man quickly shot back, "I only want the third floor." As we work with cities, we begin to realize that people have a certain vision of what they want their downtowns or their main streets to look like. And they envision the vibrancy that exists, the people socializing, the variety of food that's being served, the drinks, the music, the dance, the festivals, the art walks, the music walks, all of those things that they envision in their mind as to what they want. And oftentimes, as they begin to pursue this, they're kind of beginning to realize that there are a lot of things that they may need to do or that they haven't done in this process. So I use this three-story house as a metaphor to talk about the fact that while many people see that third floor, they don't realize that they have to begin with the foundation. So this is how we arrived at what we call the building blocks of a sociable city. And the first is laying the foundation. So sociable cities require an alliance of um, diverse stakeholders that really form a critical role in guiding the evolution of a city's burgeoning life by trend spotting, allocating resources, and overseeing implementation of strategies developed by what we refer to as action teams. As we've worked and gathered information, we really understand different perspectives as they come together to define what people envision for their sociability or their social centers or their social economy. And we've identified kind of a consensus of the aims that are often presented: to preserve and advocate for the social, cultural, and economic value of dining and entertainment, to improve the allocation of resources and update legislation and policy, to ensure public safety to reduce crime, harm, and disorder, while also minimizing quality of life impacts, and then to maintain communication between government and businesses regarding policies and procedures. We began to recognize, and this is part of a global movement, to how do you achieve these objectives? So the first is to have the selection and training of dedicated staff to be leading advocates for a safe and vibrant nightlife. What might be referred to as a night mayor, a night czar, a nighttime economy manager, a night manager. This position is really a focal point to bring the different stakeholders together. However, it's also important to recognize that there are key organizations and agencies within a city or a town that have a role to play as well. So when we look at policing, there has to be some supervisor, whether it be a sergeant, a lieutenant, or commander, who oversees the allocation of officers and the management of the deployment of officers to reduce risk. With transportation planning, it's how to better integrate pedestrian safety and what they call transport network companies like or services like Uber and Lyft into the nighttime economy, and how to make that process efficient without interfering with traffic flow. You have people who are in trash management, and they have to begin to figure out how best to meet the changing needs of a growing and vibrant nighttime economy, where the trash pickup schedules, for instance, or the storage containers or other types of things have to be adapted. So there has to be a focal point of staff who have a role to play, and they have to be an advocate for assuring their perspective is represented. This can often lead to a citywide alliance. Sometimes it's called a commission, sometimes it's called a task force or an advisory board, but it really is where you have the key stakeholders that work together to develop and to implement a consensus-driven action plan for sociability in the nighttime economy. But one really important area is the data collection to evaluate and monitor progress over time, particularly in regard to alcohol-related harm, which is one of the key contributing factors in a vibrant nightlife. When we talk about planning for people, it's that smart growth planning for nightlife that facilitates the use of hospitality zones, entertainment districts, social zones, whatever you want to call it. It's that point where there's a concentration of social activity, and that at different times of day, that area can be used for different purposes. So your goal is to establish high standards for quality of life and safe mobility options to and from and within the district, which requires some foresight to plan and the infrastructure to make it a reality. When you look at this building block plan for people, it's really broken down into two core measures. The mobility measure evaluates the systems to improve late night transportation options and traffic safety. And the quality of life measure examines your city's current approach to sound, litter, and trash management. And included on this list are the types of organizations or stakeholders that are relevant to this particular building block. The next is assure safety. And nightlife settings are typically high intensity environments with complex dynamics and risk factors. You have the integration of music and alcohol, and you have different generational mixes. It's often a melting plot of people of different orientations, whether they be different races or ethnic backgrounds or different sexual orientation. A lot of dynamics come into play when you talk about social interaction, particularly among young adults and especially after 10 or 11 p.m. But the public safety or the assure safety block is a continuum of stakeholders, obviously, which are police and venue security, but also those that are responsible or play a role in protecting patrons from violence, sexual assault, theft, underage drinking, and impaired driving. So the measures for safety are both venue safety, which is how well the venues are organized and best practices implemented for safety and security management, and the public safety measure, which evaluates the process of regulation, enforcement, and licensing, as well as coordinating code compliance. We like to refer to compliance versus enforcement, and it's also a philosophy of doing with rather than in this process. The next building block is enhance vibrancy, and vibrancy is created by a variety of social experiences in bars, restaurants, cafes, live music venues, and it's that spontaneous encounter in the public space as well, such as outdoor cafes, plazas, etc., that also signal the vitality of a district. The measure for the vibrancy block would be the entertainment measure, which reviews current social options, evaluates mix of clientele, systems for promotion, as well as attraction and retention of talent. And then the public safety, which is the systems in place for outdoor dining, street performers, vendors, as well as recognizing some of the risk factors with ADA and addressing panhandling. Again, this is a list of those stakeholders that might come to the table to be a part of strategy and action plan development. So this summarizes the sociable cities building blocks: lay a foundation, plan for people, assure safety, and enhance vibrancy, which really are the core ways in which RHI structures its events, its webinars, its publications, as well as when we provide a service to a city, we work to structure an approach that is built upon these building blocks, as well as the core measures that I recently mentioned.